Hello guys, welcome back. Bjthebrave here, and welcome back to part 2 of FORGECAST. So if you're kind of like squinting right now and wondering what the heck are you talking about, BJ, part 2, I literally just pressed play on the video. That's because this is part 2 of the podcast, and part 1 was recorded over at The Ecclesiarch's YouTube channel. So head over there now if you've not watched part 1. The link is down below in the description. Head over there, watch part 1. We talked a lot about what we love about WARPFORGE, a lot about the game, current state of the game, and what we've been playing. And then you can come back here, pick up the conversation for part 2, where what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the state of the meta game right now, and then we're going to delve into some of the changes that we'd really like to see in the upcoming balance patches, not just to the game as a whole, but we're going to really delve into each of the factions as well. So welcome back, Ecclesiarch. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing great, ready for another long conversation about the game. As always, excited. Of course, I do. Talking is my hobby, so yeah.
Exactly. So let's dive right in. So we were going to talk about the meta game a little bit. You know, obviously we're here sort of mid-December 2023. We had a patch a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago now, something like that. What are you seeing? What are your feelings about the meta? How do you rank the factions right now? What should people expect as the meta game?
Very well. So this is what I would say. First of all, your expectations really should depend on where you're playing right now. Because if you're definitely, just like with the previous EG card game, Horus Heresy Legions, it really depended on where were you in ranked. If you just hit like the start of the Legendary Division, you might see a big variety in decks. But as soon as you go up like close to top 50 or in top 50, then you're mostly going to be seeing meta decks. And right now, I think like the number one thing that is being overused, I would say, because like half the ladder is Gaskell. So, which we already mentioned in part 1, why he's so strong, because that new ability of his is super powerful, and a lot of people are playing him right now because it essentially, what he has essentially allows Gaskell to just freely exist in the early game, just dropping grots, just keeping the tempo going, and then in the mid-late game he can transfer into whatever he really wants, basically. So building.
So we should probably just say, just in case we've got any new listeners or people who are new to the game, what we're talking about is Gaskell's ability that gives everything +1 to melee attack and +1 to range attack. That always existed, but up until a couple of weeks ago, that's all that was his ability. And what they added is, because people were complaining, saying, well, there's nothing I can do on turn 1 because obviously there's no units to buff. So what they've done is said if there aren't any units on the board, he generates 2 grots. And obviously grots have 1 melee attack, 1 range attack, but they have 2 health. So it's essentially generating 4 health across 2 bodies, which is actually really difficult to get rid of in that kind of turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 phase of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. And what usually happens is if you kind of combo it with the counter attack, you get a very scary board because on turn 1 there's like 4 grots there, so it's very hard to deal with. So most probably the warlord that I've been seeing the most on my ladder games was Gaskell. Now, with the other orc warlords, I haven't seen them that often. I have seen one of the same guy. Forgot what his name is, but he's playing Zaxtruk like all the time. Hard respect to that guy, to be honest, because he's loyal to his favorite warlord, which is really cool in my opinion. But yeah, I haven't been seeing Grok and Zaxtruk a lot. Maybe Grok a little bit more, but mostly it's Gaskell. When it comes to the second faction I'm seeing the most, surprisingly, it's Abaddon. So I've been seeing like super like crazy amounts of Abaddons on the ladder. That is most.
They really want him to work.
That everybody wants to make it work, and plus, I guess they work against the orcs somewhat because Chaos does have like some AOE. They got the Spondum, they got the Traitor's Hatred or Demise or whatever it's called, the 2 AOE. So they have a lot of things that can actually shut down the orc board. However, they still cannot have like a bigger win rate than the orcs are going to have against them. I think the whole thing about the chaos being so popular right now is that not only do people want to make them work, some against the orcs they're somewhat good. That's actually why I placed them so high in my tier list, because it's not that they're good by their own, it's that they're pretty nice when it comes to the orcs, right? Harken, World Claimer, and Abaddon. Well, of course, Sylar is still a meme, and I'll never take that warlord seriously unless they really change something about it. When you have a better,
like being able to choose which one of the three
yeah, because there's
you
like literally the same warlord in the Ultramarines that's the same warlord but better. So yeah, there's that. So Abaddon, then there's Gaskul, and the third one that I'm seeing the most, funny enough, is Emotech. There's still a lot of Emotechs running around, and I really do love and hate when somebody texts me, "Oh, hi, that was your Emotech that I just beat you with," and I was like, "Wow, maybe I should not, maybe I should not have done that." Okay, joking, of course. Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of Emotechs, and I can understand why. He's still pretty good. He's still solid, and he can still do what he needs to do. One of the warlords that I do believe, however, from the Necrons is better than Emotech right now, but is purely obnoxious, is Orikhan into Scarabs. Purely obnoxious deck, something that I would like to disappear from this game, never to be seen again. But I've seen that a lot, and especially like top five players, there's a lot of Scarab Emotechs. I've been seeing whenever I face like top 10 or top 5, there's a lot of people playing the Scarab deck right now. It's very, very powerful, undoubtedly, because it has very low counterplay with it. And the other thing that I've been seeing, surprisingly enough, is Swarmlord. So Swarmlord has been more and more popular, increasingly popular, mainly probably due to Shumatsu playing like a bazillion games with it. So people are seeing that. People are probably seeing that as strong, and they're like, oh, so maybe I can make it work too. So there's a lot of people playing the Swarmlord. Other than that, no Necron, like no Nemesaur, no. I haven't seen like Neurothrope or Tervagon. I saw one Nemesaur, I think was the Black Prince playing Nemesaur. He was memeing a little bit with monoliths and stuff like that. And as for the Eldar, I'm seeing both Galen and Keltalk equally, but rarely. So
I'm not seeing any Keltalk.
I saw like 4 or 5, but like maybe 3 was Galen. No, not 4. I'm lying. Maybe I saw like 10, and 6 would be Galen, and 4 would be Keltalk. Zephyr like I think I saw only once. And the Ultramarines are still around, but mostly it's Snowfire playing them, I think. And there's a couple of more people playing them, maybe like the player, I think, For Socialism is his name. Like, I've seen a couple of people who used to play Ultramarines still stick to the faction and still play it. However, I do feel like the Ultramarines are still underperforming it a little bit because the pressure is not there anymore. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been seeing. Gaskul, Emotech, and Abaddon. Mostly I've seen those 3 warlords the most.
Yeah, I think I'm having first of all, I love what you said about it. Really depends about where you are currently in the game. Like if you're just starting out, I almost want to create a Smurf account just as a beginner again, just to kind of like see what the ladder experience is like. Lower down, I mean, I've played in the top 50 all of this season because I finished in the top 50 last season, so I've not left the top 50, and I'm currently like number 12, I think. And so yeah, I mean, you do get a lot of bots. It's true up at the top end, but you also do play meta. When you play players, you are playing meta decks all the time. I mean, I'd say I'm mainly playing against Gazgul, obviously. I'm actually seeing quite a bit of Galen. I think Galen's pretty good at the minute. He is a little bit draw dependent, but I think can keep up with the Orkz. A good player with a good draw can do pretty well. And a lot of the Orc decks don't run hard shell, which I know you've mentioned before, and I've mentioned it's a good counter to the Eldar. Anything that's like Lich Guardy, like I call them big Lich Guards, and you know they're a problem for the Eldar. But most players aren't playing him actually. So actually, the Orcs don't have tons of like high toughness things, and the shuriken damage and the tempo actually of Galen is one of the few things in the game that can keep up with the Orc tempo that you just talked about. You know, that crazy opening that Gazgul can do. Actually, the Orcs can the Eldar can keep up with that. So I'm seeing a bit of that. And then the other one, a big one I'm seeing at the top of the ladder is Scarabs. And Scarabs are a very good counter to Orcs. And there's 2 guys currently in the top 5 who both play the Scarab deck and are just kind of like farming Orcs at the minute. So if you just want to beat Orcs, if you literally rage quit one day because you just lost to Gazgul again, then play Scarabs because your win rate will start to go up considerably. Yeah, seen. But other than that, I'd probably say the same as you. I think maybe things like Swarmlord might be because people are getting deeper into their collections now, so they're actually being able to get the legendary heroes and try them out. The only thing I'd say about Swarmlord is, holy cow, it's horrible against Gazgul, right? Like when he plays the 4 Grots, at least any other warlord in the game can trade with the Grots, but the Grots can attack the Swarmlord's ranged attack, and the Grots don't even die. So it's
Terrifying.
absolutely agonizing for this. I mean, I've played Shimizu no Kishu. He's definitely the best. He's like the Tyranid god, and I mean, I beat him a few times that deck, and we sort of always GG in Discord afterwards. And I'm just like, dude, like, just think of all the revenge you're gonna have on me when they when they
When
do
this
the
is
next
over.
balance, when the balance patch comes
Yeah.
in. You're gonna have so much fun. But yeah, in terms of like the meta, I think the only other thing I would say about the meta and what I'm seeing is, I'll say a positive and a negative. The positive is that I am seeing a lot of variety in the Gazgul decks. So just because you're playing Gazgul doesn't mean you're playing the same deck all the time. And I know in other games, like I think in RuneTech, like when there's a meta deck, it's like card for card. That's the deck, and you think, oh my god, I've played 40 games today, and 33 of them have been against the same deck. Whereas actually, what I'm seeing is a lot of variety in how people are building the Gazgul decks. So at least that to me shows you like quite a good thing from a design point of view. The downside, the negative thing I want to say about the meta is I don't like that in this game. It does feel at the minute a little bit like at the top of the ladder, one faction tends to dominate. I'd say we saw this more last season, actually, where literally everyone in the top 20, except for Shimatsu, rocking them Tyranids, everyone was Ultramarines. And I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Usually there's like a stone, scissors, paper kind of thing going on. So like there's a way to counter that top deck. But it's slightly less consistent against other decks. Whereas what I'm finding in WARPFORGE right now is that once it's established which faction is king, it tends to dominate a little bit too heavy. As I say,
Yeah.
I think right now the Scarabs are the counter, and that's what we're seeing exist in the top 10, apart from Shimatsu. But overall, I think I just think it's putting people off at the top level. I think is that it's very limited in terms of like deck design and what you can do to counter things. And when we get on to changes that we want to see, maybe we'll come back to that a little bit. Yeah, anything else in terms of the meta you want to say?
I guess not. The only thing that I really am liking is that whether it is because it's actually better, whether it is because it counters the meta, or it is because people really want it to work, I'm happy I'm seeing some chaos. That's a good change because last season there was no
True.
chaos literally. Because if you were playing chaos, either you made a mistake, you were desperate, or you were just having fun. Because nobody really played chaos competitively, I think. Because unless you got like super lucky, you were not gonna do anything with chaos previous season. You just sat there with Abaddon, just pressing end turn for like. Oh
I
my
think
god.
now with Chaos, I actually think World Claim is pretty good actually with the Blast too.
Yeah,
That's
he's
pretty
pretty
good against
nice.
Orc.
It does
And
well versus the Scarabs too.
good against Scarabs, good against Eldar as well, right? Like to take, because even if you kill the Eldar unit, obviously there's often stones left behind. So having the Blast 2 is really good. I think he's in a really good spot. I think Abaddon is still slightly disappointing, but obviously he's better. I think the difference is with Chaos is like, look, last season if you were playing Abaddon, expect a 35% win rate at best.
Hmm.
I think now, if your expectation is that you're going to climb ladder with Abaddon, I think you're going to be disappointed, especially as you get towards the top end. But can you hold a 50% win rate? I think you can. I think that's a more reasonable thing. I've seen some top players
No, you can.
are claiming a kind of 50 to 55% win rate. So that's what you're aiming at. Whereas if you get good with like Gazgul, for example, then God knows what
I mean, it's
you know.
still a good change because Chaos, I think, had like a
Yeah,
40 or something percent win rate
they did.
last season, so
Yeah, I agree.
it's a little bit better, yeah.
I agree, 100%. All right, so let's chat a little bit about some of the changes now that we'd like to see to improve WarpForge. Let's start with some of the generic things. We'll get into this faction-specific stuff, Ecclesiarch, in a sec, but let's just talk more generally. What are some of the kind of either mechanics or key things, more generic changes that you'd like to see in the game right now?
Okay, number one, it's what we've already mentioned. I want to see a graveyard in this game.
Graveyard,
I
yeah.
think it's absolutely necessary, and since this is 40k, and unlike like Legions, it has infinite expanding possibilities with factions and stuff. I think that they need a graveyard because if they are planning to make this game big and
Mhm.
competitive, that's a necessary thing there. Plus, it can open up so many interesting things when it comes to graveyard plays that you mentioned. That's one thing that
Hundred,
I want to see.
100%. I think that's a really good point that you're making there. It's not just that you can see what's being played and what things have died. It's the design element then of like, oh, let's come up with some kind of design mechanics that interact with graveyards and things like that. 100%. Should we go one for one on the
Sure.
changes we want to see? Yeah, yeah. So just keep. All right. So cool. So one from you is the graveyard. I think one for me, and it's kind of like top of my wish list really. I really want to see an update to the ladder system. I understand why it hasn't happened yet. EG obviously made a lot of changes in this recent balance patch. So we've got to be patient. Not all these changes are going to happen overnight and improvements aren't going to happen overnight. And even if EG are listening to this and think, oh, that's a good idea, it'll still take them 3 months before we'd see it materialize. So don't expect it in like the January patch. But my overriding thing, and this is really coming from a base of being a CCG player and playing like 6 different games and seeing ladder systems and feeling how it feels like to play ladder every season. Few things need to change about the ladder system for me. The first thing is that there is very little emphasis placed on going between the divisions in this game. In Runeterra, when you go up from like the epic division to the whatever division, like that's a big deal. And everything from the layout of the how you see the ladder progression and the rewards you get, and you can't go back down a division. That's another thing. Like all of that stuff, like really plays into your intrinsic motivation around wanting to kind of like grow and play in the game and kind of like get to that next achievement and unlock it and get that kind of serotonin.
Yeah.
um, but in this game, it's almost like, oh, am I legendary now? Oh, okay, I didn't notice. Whereas, like, in most games I've played, like, hitting legendary is almost like that's the goal for most people on ladder every season. It's like, that's the big goal. It's like, can I hit legendary? When will I hit legendary? How quickly can I hit legendary? I'd love to see it designed in a way that makes a much bigger deal about that. Other changes is just in terms of on the ladder system. Obviously, they did fix the points thing a little bit, and there's a problem about running into bots and how many points you get. I think they're still not quite there. I think for me, I'd rather play a player that's, further down the ladder than play a bot when I'm sat at like 12th on ladder because I want to play humans, but I just think the punishment shouldn't be so grand for
Yeah.
for it because what that does is it incentivizes what's called camping. So I get up to 10th on ladder and then I just go, right, I'm not going to play now because if I play I'm going to lose too many points. So it decentivizes me playing the game, and I think any game developer, surely you want people playing the game, right? So like anything you're doing that disincentivizes playing the game, is probably not a good idea. um the other thing, I mean, obviously, I get the other side of that argument that yeah, but it could also disincentivize the poor guy who's just got his first legendary and he gets BJ top 12 player or whatever and gets his ass kicked by Gazgul. That's not very fun either. So I get it, but he's not going to lose too many points from doing that. And actually, if he beats me, you could still give him a big point buff for beating a higher ranked
That
player.
was how it was in Legions. That's how was
Yeah,
it in Legions.
I super think that's doable. But I just want to talk about one other thing about the ladder system because there's quite a lot that you could change. But there's one other big thing. I would love, love, love. Oh my God, I don't know that's going to happen, but this would like push this game into like the stratosphere for me if they did this. We've already said that one of the biggest problems with ladder, if we look at the top 10 last season, if we look at the top 10 right now, it was filled with Ultramarines. This one's filled with Orkz. You're always going to have a meta deck. You're always going to have a meta faction. So how do you get around that? The answer, I believe, is what Gwent came up with in their what they called their Pro League, which is kind of like Legendary Division. What they did is they came up with a system that incentivized you playing with multiple factions. So right now, the ladder is just about how many wins and how many losses, right? It doesn't matter if you do all that with Gazgul or not. imagine, like I'll keep it to. I won't talk about Gwent because people don't necessarily know Gwent. We'll keep it within WARPFORGE. But imagine when you hit the legendary division, that your overall ranking was the accumulation of your Eldar ranking, your Ultramarine ranking, and your Orc ranking. Now, I'm not going to force you to play every faction. And actually, it would be a terrible idea to do this outside of the Legendary Division, because if you're new to the game and you're just trying to collect cards, you've barely got one meta deck, never mind 3 meta decks. So you don't do it to the beginners. But at the Legendary level, where you've got the bigger collectors and the better players, that is where I think you can introduce this multi-faction thing where you say, look, you've got to post the aggregate of your top 3, your best 3 factions. And I'm telling you, it is a fantastic idea because it incentivizes. It stops this problem of, oh, there's a meta deck, so everyone just plays that and grinds. It's like, yeah, cool, okay, so you got a really good Orc score. Now what? Where are your other 2 scores, bro? You've got to get an aggregate of 3 scores in order to actually, be in the top 10, and that I think is how you get around like one meta deck. Magic the Gathering, for example, has a different way. They have a what do they call the sub bench thing where you sideboarding. So in Magic the Gathering, they play best of 3 games. So if I lose to your Gazgul, I've got a sideboard of 10 cards that I can now take in for the following games. So I can kind of build my sideboard to kind of fight against the Orcs. The card pool's not big enough in this game for that. And also, I don't really want to play best of 3s for every one matchup because it'll take all day just to play one game. So I actually think the Gwent idea, the principle of that, where design the system so that it encourages you to play multiple factions, I would love that, dude. It makes it so much more enjoyable. So much more enjoyable.
That would indeed be very, very good. That would make the variety actually big.
Super cool.
And yeah, you're right. Bot farming needs to be fixed, and yeah, they should really do the legions thing. With if you beat 2,800 with 1,000 ranking, you get 50, but he loses like 10 or something. So
yeah,
it's very
agreed.
normal.
Yeah, that would be a really good change. Yeah. So what's the next change you'd really like to see?
Well, we already mentioned that we want to see the draft thingy go down a little bit, because right now draft takes too long. I think 2 hours or something, which is crazy. So maybe they should decrease the maximum wins to 10 or do something about that. But more, I think another thing is that in general, hasting up the games, right? One of the changes that I would like to see is increasing the speed of the animations. They did a fantastic job with the Tyranids. It was very necessary, but now there's a lot of other things they need to do. For example, Spirit Stone, when you pick it up, there's no need to be so dramatic. Just make it quick. Remnant Resurrection, make it a little bit quicker. Maybe with Codex. Well, Codex is okay, but you could also still make that a little bit different. Mark of Chaos, or Dark Pact, make it a little bit faster. So all of these small little effects can be made a little bit faster because it's gonna add up. In the end, there's gonna be -5 minutes for the match, which is going to be a big deal. So one of the things that I would like to see is the pacing of the game go faster by speeding up the animations and maybe reducing some maximum draft time, and that's going to be a huge bonus.
I think that's a really good one, definitely. Yeah, the Tyranids was painful, wasn't it, last season?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of I don't know if it's just changes, but things I would like to see added to the game. The biggest one for me is more cards. Right now, obviously, we're at the start of the game. And I think we just need more cards. The game is crying out for it, right? From a deck designer point of view, you and I are content creators. You want to come up with deck guides and new stuff, and it's actually, there's only one archetype. That's why I find Orkz the most fun right now. I genuinely think I really want to see Eldar develop a little bit because I think that's got potential. I think the Eldar faction's got a lot of potential for multiple ways to play. I'm actually about to do a Wraith Knight build. That's my next little project. I think the Wraith Knight's not bad. I mean, obviously he's super slow, but if you can get there, he's pretty good and pretty difficult to get rid of. But I'd love to see more cards added, and what I hope is that, and maybe you know this from their previous game, when they drop Tau or Imperial Guard or a complete new faction, did they actually release cards for existing factions, or is it literally...
Well, this was how it really rolled with them. So with Horus Heresy Legions, there was also neutral cards. Like there
Right.
was a neutral pool, as I've mentioned, like
That'd be good.
There were Imperial Guard, Chaos, and Mechanicum, and everybody could include them with some exceptions. And whenever there was an expansion, it also brought a couple of neutral cards to the game as well. And
Mm.
that was kind of fun because it really kind of shifted the meta a lot because there were a lot of very different decks. Like, just to give you an example, when you would play as a Raven Guard, you could play a classic Raven Guard faction, but you could also pick one of their apothecaries and play for vehicles, and you would have like a neutral vehicle legendary card that would really benefit you, and that can bring a lot of fun stuff. I think that's a little bit better because I think that could make the game a little more interesting. But I have a little bit of a suspicion on what's going to happen. So you have noticed that there's like clan names and not faction names, right? You're not playing Orkz, you're playing the
Yeah.
Koth clan. And you're
Yeah.
not playing, for example, Chaos Marines. You're playing the Black Legion, right?
The Sautek Empire,
Yeah,
whatever
the
Yeah.
Saltec and so on. And I also kind of crawled inside the whole voice line files and everything, and I found some voice lines of characters yet to be added to the game that were from different sub factions. So I think what they're gonna do is that maybe with some expansions, they're also gonna bring sub factions. Like what my prediction is that maybe, let's say for example, you're playing the Ultramarines, right? And instead of Ultramarines, maybe, well, I think Ultramarines is not the best example. Maybe you're playing like the Goth clan and suddenly you want to play the Snakebites, right? And if you choose the Snakebite Orc clan, maybe what's going to happen is that you cannot choose, let's say, the Archel anymore, but instead you could choose a Squiggoth. So maybe
Ah, no.
like you have maybe a common orc card pool, but then
Oh,
there's
nice.
also gonna be the faction specific orc card pool, right? So
That would
everybody
be
gets
so cool.
yeah, like maybe everybody gets a Slaga boy, but not everybody gets a Squiggoth, right? Because us not having Squiggoth in the game is super suspicious anyway, because it's like an iconic unit, so it's definitely coming. So I think instead of neutral units, what they're gonna do is that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
But there's also gonna be some standalone factions as well. Like I cannot see how you can integrate the Blood Angels, for example, in the Ultramarines, right? That would be a little weird. So there's gonna be, I think, some standalone factions, and there's gonna be like some clan. So or maybe they've got something else in mind, but this is just my like prediction.
I can't wait for more cards, man. I can't wait for more cards. It's really gonna just like, yeah, super open up the game. Obviously, it can also ruin games. I think Legends of Runeterra struggled from that. Like the base sets for Legends of Runeterra was fantastic. It was one of the best. And then as they added cards, like it actually, it can obviously wrecks the balance, and it can send the game a bit wonky. So hopefully they can do an okay job of that. But yeah, more cards. Are there any other kind of generic changes before we jump into some of the?
Nothing for now. Maybe down the line, this is like very far away,
Mm.
probably, but maybe like different game modes and stuff like that would definitely be
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. A replay system would be nice.
Oh, they're gonna add that soon for sure because they had that
Yeah,
in Legions, and I think they're gonna implement that very simply.
yeah.
So replay
Do you
system
think?
is really important.
What about across the board? What do you think about Warlord health? Like, do you think any changes? Would you like to see any tweaks or so? For example, at the minute we have this thing, don't we? Where so first of all, 35 is the benchmark. Is that good? Does 35 work for this game? And then
It's
second of all, the legendary cards have 40, and is that gap okay in your eyes?
probably it is because like in usually what you're gonna have, but they need to keep it balanced. Let me tell you what I mean. In Legions, there were 30 HP warlords as well, 30, 35, 40. There were even 25 HP ones. But the payoff was that usually the ability of these warlords was better than the golden
Ah,
ones. And
makes
on
more sense.
top of that, there was like this very special thing in Legions, which I think is gonna come here as well. The Primarchs, the Chaos Primarchs had something called Whispers of Chaos, while the Loyalist ones had something called Reckoning. So this was a special card that they would start with, and it was like a transformation after you would meet certain like
Yeah.
expectations. It would transform. Like for example, Conrad Kurz at 10 energy could use his ability Madness, and he would turn into like this Night Haunter or something, blah blah blah. But the thing was, this was a
Plus
card that started in your hand, so you were essentially starting with one less card because this had to be in your hand from the very beginning, because, for example, with Sanguinius, the card cost like 16 or 18, and it became one less cost every time a friendly unit died. So you have to have this at the start in your hand, but you start with less cards. So the problem with the 40 HP Warlords was that they started with less cards. Now this doesn't exist. So it might be not a good idea that Gaskull, for example, has such a great ability, and plus on top of that, he can also have 40 HP. Like, if he would summon,
100%.
let's say, one Grot or an Orc Boy, then Grook's ability to draw a card with +1 damage would be far superior. So yeah, I think there are some tweaks necessary. There's also an initiative system that I would like to see implemented here. In HHL, there was the initiative system. The initiative was very low, medium, high, and very high. And the Warlord with higher initiative always went first. It was not a 50-50. So, for example, with Gaskull, since he has such a powerful ability, you could slap a low initiative on him. And maybe like that could be like something that would be a disadvantage against, for example, Galen, who might have high initiative, right? So they might want to... In this case, however, Gaskull would benefit from that because the counterattack is ridiculous with him, but you know what I mean. So maybe initiative would be cool.
That's interesting. There's a lot of interesting changes you mentioned there. I mean, I think as a starter for 10, I'd probably just like to see most of the 40 health ones reduced to 38. I think a 3-point difference would, because I think at the minute, like, Calgar dominated last season. Now it's Gazgul, and even in Chaos, like, people are leaning to Abaddon when there's clearly a tech choice that's better in the meta right now. But I think that 5 points makes a huge difference, especially when you think about some of the ways the game can close out. Like, you think about the Orc closeouts with the Warbiker combo and proper killie. It's like 5 points is massive. Like, it's absolutely massive. In a race between Gazgul and Grook, that 5 points can be the difference.
Yeah.
So I think 5 is just a little bit too tipping over the edge. I'd quite like to see it reduced to 3. Maybe keep the Tyranid ones as 40, and maybe that becomes like a real special thing, that it's this giant organic beast that's like even way bigger than Calgar, obviously. So like maybe you keep the Tyranid one, that'd be quite cool. But I think the others should all come down to 38. But yeah. Anyway, we've got about 10 minutes. Let's dive into some of the actual factions. So let's start with the Ultramarines. What changes do we want to see? What do we think about them? I mean, I think we both agree that the nerfs went a bit too far.
A bit, but yeah, it's too far.
A bit too far. And I'd kind of like to see them just kind of almost wind some of those back, run some of those back, actually.
Inceptor.
Yeah, 100%.
Inceptor being a copy-paste of Toonblade without the Remnant is terrifying. They should return it, because now they literally have no answer to, for example, Triarch Praetorian and stuff like that. They should revert the Inceptor change as a start. It was not necessary to nerf that.
Yeah. I think I'm happy with the 1-drop change that they made. I think that was the big one that needed to.
That's a very good change.
That's a good change, and I'd keep that. But I agree. I think Inceptor. I also think Angels of Death. They went too far with it. I actually don't. Actually, bear in mind, if people are new to the game, they actually did nerf it from 6 to 7 midway last season. So it went from 6 mana, 6 energy to 7 energy, and it had 4 bodies. Now it's 7 energy and has 3 bodies. Personally, I think Ultramarines should be able to keep it. I think 7 and 4 bodies is fine. It's strong, don't get me wrong. It's a strong card, but it's not... It's 7 mana, you know. Tomb World is 8 mana. Like, come on, you know, it should be good. It should be good.
One thing that was the problem with it was that they usually comboed with the Octavio, which usually made it very toxic. So one of the things that they could do is they could keep the 4 bodies and maybe reduce the health to 2, so that, for example, they can still combo it with Octavio, but at the same time, at 7 energy, you cannot just create a full board.
There's a design problem with that, though, because you're creating a different card. So at the minute, the card it's creating is like the 2-drop, isn't it? Like, stat-wise, the name of it is the 2-drop. I
they'll need to create a new card for that.
I think that's the issue. But I don't know. I'd rather see it, or they go back to 6 energy. So they keep it at 3 bodies.
That could be good.
I actually think that could work as well.
That could definitely work.
What else do we want to see for Ultramarines?
I think anything else there. Maybe Uriel Ventris needs some love, I guess, because he's just inferior to the others. I mean, they could do something about him. Like, I know what they could do about him. They had a very good thing in Horus Heresy Legions with warlords like Uriel Ventris. They had a very cool passive. Start with 1 extra card. and that could be like a big deal. He starts with one more card, and he doesn't have the card draw, but he initially has more cards. That would be like so cool. And if the initiative system also drops, he could have like high initiative plus start with one more card. He would be like Garviel Loken from Legions, and it will be pretty good. That's the other change I would like to see for Uriel. He would definitely be more playable that way.
Got you. Okay, so moving on to the Orkz. The Orkz dominating the meta right now. I already mentioned one earlier about the unstable. I still think unstable's not right for me. It sounds fine if you think about it as one card, but when you think about a game of playing a theme of vehicles and maybe 10 of them blowing up all next to your warlord, it's like I don't want to lose half my warlord's life to this mechanic. So at the very least, I'd like to see it change from 0 to 2. And actually, those types of changes, those minor tweaks, are what I'd like to see in general more in the game, as opposed to these huge changes like that they made to and like reworks that they made to the Ultramarines. Unless it's a rework of a buff. So, like, was it Captain Sicarius, the legendary, where they reworked his actual ability?
Yeah, they changed it.
It's still crap, but I like that thinking. Like, if you're going to buff something, maybe a rework makes sense. But if we're nerfing things, I'd rather see, like, just tweak it and let's play for a month and see what happens, or a few weeks, and do it that way. But yeah, so for me, that unstable ability is a little bit wrong. Gazgul's the big one, right? Now, you think that it should be a Slugger Boy.
Yeah, single Slugger Boy.
What's the health of a Slugger Boy?
2-3. So 2-2-3 is the stat for Slugger Boy.
So this is my argument. I think it should be 1 grot, because if you make it a Slugger Boy, the enemy warlord still can't take it out.
That's true.
And I think that's the problem that the grots give you in the first place. They're giving you 4 health across 2 bodies, so just the warlord on their own can't take that out. If you think about Galen, he plays a unit. If you think about Nemesis, he plays a unit. The warlord can deal with that. If a warlord can't deal with it, it's too powerful on the first turn, and I think Slugger Boy would still provide a problem.
That is true.
The main ability of Gazgul is to buff the board. That's what that mechanic's trying to do. They've done the right thing, I think, in adding something. We never want the warlord to be able to do nothing turn 1. I think that's a good principle from a design perspective. But I think if you made it 1 grot, the enemy warlord could get rid of it.
Or they could just create a new unit, the Gretchen, which is going to be, let's say, 2-2-2, so that it's not like as weak as a grot. Just make a Gretchen and problem solved. Make a Gretchen and he summons a Gretchen when he plays it. Easy, problem solved. Speaking of Gretchens, Makari the Grot needs to change, because right now either that needs to change or somehow they need to fix the interaction with the Green Horde, because Infinite Makari is obnoxious. So either they have to do with that it comes back to your hand at the start of your turn, or
I like that.
Or one thing that they need to do is they need to add the silence cards into the game, the jam cards, so that somebody can jam that troop so that it's just silenced and cannot do the ability anymore. Like for lock from Gwent, like when you lock the unit and it cannot use the ability anymore, the passives even. Either that is what's needed in the game or that needs to change. Something needs to be done about that. And of course the Green Horde is something that needs to change, because like right now, being able to vomit your whole hand on energy turn 3 is disgusting, because there used to be a warlord in Legions, Lucretia, that you would play her whole hand on turn 2 if she had the correct setup, and that is never fun and enjoyable for anybody. So they either need to increase the cost, or they need to maybe reduce the cost by 1, or they need to like think of something what they can really do.
It's interesting, like what you're saying about the Green Horde, because to me it feels like a finisher. Like it should be like this big orc player. Like it almost feels like it should cost 7 or 8 mana, and you just fill the board. It's a bit like what Rock Invasion in a way is like the Green Horde in a way, isn't it? It's like but I don't know how you do it early game and it still be fair. The problem is in this game is that there aren't many ways to kind of come back from it. So it's very rare that you're able to put multiple units down, especially if we're talking pre-turn 5. Like it's really rare that you're able to do that, and where you are able to do it, it kind of breaks the game. And so
it's impossible then.
The only thing is AoE at that point. Like it's an Eldritch Storm perhaps, is the only thing that kind
Yeah.
of answers it. The Makari thing's interesting. I like your idea of it comes back at the start of next turn. The only problem is like, let's say you've got 9 cards in hand, which you are likely
Yeah.
to have when you're playing like Face Ripper. That you've already got this problem of that you draw a card and you don't get your hero warlord talent power. That's the order in which they do that. So then you'd have to factor in this third bit of what happens. Where does Makari come in this order? And like him just dying wouldn't feel right to me. So, and also there is some fair, intricate play with Makari of like, for example, he's on the right hand side. I attack with him, kill him off, bring him back on over here to buff the other unit. I think that's
Yeah.
fair and tactical use of him. But I agree, it's just the interaction with the Green Horde which is broken. Yeah.
Or just make the Green Horde only work on Orkz and problem solved.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
also another thing.
Yeah. The Warbug, the Squig Buggy has turned out to be
It's
not as
fine.
broken. Yeah, I thought that was going to be way
fine.
more broken, but it's actually a bit
It's due to the
underwhelming.
it's fine due to the unstable because it can cause
Yeah,
a
it
chain
just
reaction and just destroy you.
it just
So
it kills
yeah, it's
kills
fine.
itself. It kills itself, doesn't it? Anything else for the Orcs?
Nah, I think
No.
the rest is okay.
Okay, what about the Aeldari?
Aeldari is like these. They are one of the factions that I do believe are in a good spot. So I really wouldn't want too big of any changes with them because they seem very balanced. Maybe Zephyrblade, the new ability is really better than the old one. But I'm really afraid to suggest anything with the Eldar because right now they're really good. They're like good. They're
I'm not
like
afraid.
like
I'm
good.
not afraid. Let
Go on.
me because I've played a lot of Galen and a little bit of Ketok, and I'm starting now with Zephyrblade, and I'm already realizing like I think the early game minion that so the what let's call it the 1 to 5 energy cost cards in Eldar are really well designed. I think they're brilliant. I think it's one of, in fact, it might be the best in the game. Like of any set from 1 to 5, I'd pick Eldar. I'd put the Eldar faction up there. Brilliant. The back end, the sort of 6 to 10, however, I cannot say the same for. And
Avatar of Cain.
I'm super disappointed, man. I mean, like, if you're a fan of 40k and you want to talk about the lore, the Avatar, for crying out loud, he should be like the finisher that I'm having wet dreams about. Like, this should be.
Well, to be fair, he also gets treated very badly in the lore. So
I know, but come on, like, so. But it's not just the Avatar. It's
yeah.
also like if you look at the vehicles, why are they all like 2 or 3 of the vehicles all have the same ability? Rally, deal 3 damage. Come on, man. Can we be a bit more creative? Why have they got the same ability?
Yeah.
And the Wraith Lord kind of sucks. And I just think if they just this is going back on what I said before. I'd actually like to see a little bit of reworking, a little bit of redoing on their abilities, at the late game stuff. And I think that's what Eldar are super lacking at the minute. I also think that would really help Zephyrblade, because again, I want to be running the Fire Prisms and the Falcons and the way I want to run all of those, but they're all like the same or not quite good
Copy
enough.
paste.
So yeah, but exactly. So I'd like to see a little bit more personality in them and a little bit more strength as well in some of them. I mean, obviously what's the one that kills enemy flyers? That one's powerful. That doesn't need a buff. The Hemlock doesn't need a buff. I think the Hemlock is fine as it is. I think those two are well designed actually. They're kind of okay to good, and then they have this huge payoff, but it's situational. I think that's really good. I think the Falcon and the Fire Prisms could do with a tweak. The Wave Serpent's not bad. I kind of wish the Wave Serpent was 6 energy actually, because the ability of the Wave Serpent is to bring you into the late game, right? So you keep playing those 2 Storm Guardians every turn. But the problem is you can't do that till turn 8. So I'd actually like to see that maybe even lose a point of something and come down a little bit in cost, and then maybe make, I don't know, the Falcon cost more but buff its ability. Something like that would be pretty cool. It also fits in, by the way, with the lore, the game, because if you play 40k, like the Falcon's a heavy support, whereas the Wave Serpent is like a troop transport, so it kind of isn't as big a deal. Anyway, yeah, so that's it for Eldar, I think, for me. Well, let's do Tyranids. What do you think to Tyranids? What's some of the
Well,
changes you want?
Tyranids, I mean, the first change that I would like is the change to High Fleet Leviathan Legendary, and I think they could change it in a way that it could be like a Tervigon Legendary, like they could reduce the cost of it to 5 even, but what it would do is it would reduce the cost of units that are generated instead of all the units, but it could reduce the cost by 2, for example, right? So what you could do is you could have like this as a you could have this like as a card that just buffs the termagants that you are creating from your Tervigon. So, and it would cost like 5, and instead of 7, maybe it could even draw you a card just to not be useless. Or instead of doing that, maybe they could reduce the cost to 6, and let's say they could say like draw 2 cards on top of just using the ability. Because, for example, for now, I'm not sure if like what I'm suggesting is good or not. What I'm trying to say is that just playing that card for 7 energy and do nothing is just never really good unless you have like an insane advantage and you get very lucky. So it should either draw you cards, or the cost should be reduced, or the cost reduction should be higher. Like it needs a buff. It needs a buff for sure, because right now it's a dead card, and it would definitely make Tervigon more playable because it would increase the swarm's capabilities. Now, the other thing that I would like to see with Tyranids, and don't get angry at me, Tyranid players, what I would like to see is the Bloodthirst should definitely be nerfed, but instead of the Bloodthirst, they could receive some very nice quality buffs. Like, for example, the 1 energy stuff like the flank and the invisibility gains card draw, for example. Some of the units could gain Synapse if they don't have it. Let's say they could maybe buff some other units. Because right now Tyranids seem a little, even though they're very fun, they still seem a little cheesy, because they can kill you at like 40 HP if they have the setup. That is fun and not fun at the same time. But right now, if you just take it away, they'll be a dead faction. So what you really need to do is you need to compensate them by giving them some card draw capabilities, maybe giving them some small buffs to your units. And as I mentioned in part 1, one of the main things that I would like to see with Tyranids is I want their biomorphologies and like organic adaptations or whatever they are become different. Instead of just giving flat 2 attack and 2 ranged attack, make some more interesting stuff like armor, flank, and camouflage, for example. Like that's much more interesting, because you get a big choice of what you really want to do there, and it makes
I'd
it
like that. That's a legendary card, right? I'd like that card to always start in your hand, opening hand. I think that would be a cool. It's cheesy, but it's a legendary, right? So like,
yeah.
Because otherwise it's pretty much a dead card. So that could be quite.
Or
cool.
you could have it like also give it to the units in your deck, but in that case it might be a little too strong. So
yeah,
I
I agree. I agree with you. The combo is ridiculous. It's too much, and it's making them a bit one-dimensional, which is a shame. And I'd really like to see swarm mechanics. Like I think about the Scarab build right now, and I think to me that feels like kind of. It feels a bit like something that I want the Tyranid Swarm to be able to do, which is like this meat grinder kind of mechanic, right? Where we just keep pumping out Termagants and Hormagaunts. And I don't know if I like the idea that the Hormagaunts and Termagants, for example, can merge. I know that's the Swarm thing, isn't it? That they can merge. The idea of having this giant Hormagaunt, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why is the Hormagaunt bigger than the Carnifex? Like, that's stupid. Like, what should happen is for every Carnifex, there's like 1,000 Hormagaunts. Like
they could get buffed.
That's what I want to see. I think the swarm mechanic's not right to me, and basically what I'm saying is, I want to be able to play Tyranids where I can form a go wide strategy as opposed to just go tall.
Yeah.
The problem right now with Nids and Chaos is they're both reliant on go tall strategies, and the Orkz have hard removal for that. So what are you supposed to do? And the way we should be countering that is with go wide strategies, which is what the Scarabs do. That's what the Scarabs are. They're a go wide strategy, and that's why they beat Orkz. So yeah, that's what I'd love to see with the Tyranids.
For sure.
Okay, so let's go on to the
Necrons
Chaos?
probably, or Chaos.
Let's do Necrons and finish with Chaos. Yeah. So anything
Necrons.
for Necrons?
I think Necrons is very easy. I just want 2 changes there. Maybe 3. One is that Scarabs need to change. As I've said, they could do a similar change to what they did to Rotfly. They can have like the initial Scarab that you drop, or with the Scarab that you summon with the Scarab Nest, make 2 copies with Artifice instead of 1. but the copies cannot make more copies. Like no matter I don't think anybody should really complain about scarabs getting nerfed because it's an uninteractive, obnoxious, and not fun mechanic in the game. So I think that it certainly needs to change. You could still be able to combo it because you would be able to drop like, for example, you would play Scarab Nest, and when you would play your thingy, what's it called again? Like when you would play a spell, it would instantly fill your board with scarabs because all three would be initial scarabs, right? That summon two. So you would need only one stratagem to fill the whole board. But once your opponent takes out the initial three scarabs, those summoned ones cannot multiply. So there's actually now some counterplay. And from your side, it could also now be like a goal to protect those scarabs with like summoning scarabs with Lich card and stuff like that, and maybe buff. So that would be much better. Tomb World, I think it would be much better if Tomb World goes to 10 energy, but it gets reverted to 6 units because I usually just think that cards like that are kind of obnoxious, just press and win. So it's like, nah, not that good. Because like with Emotech, if you get a good curve, like on like energy turn 8, you can drop like something nuts. Or they could leave it as it is, maybe. I don't know. I would still think that reverting it to 6 units, but increasing the cost a bit could be better for sure.
So
I don't know.
I'm gonna disagree slightly on the Tomb World. I completely agree with the Scarab change. And I also agree that these are the only two I'm interested in right now. Obviously, there's some other units that aren't played that could do with some minor buffs.
Frenzy package.
Yeah, but right now I think Necrons are actually in a pretty decent place from a design perspective.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tweak with them too much. I'd kind of like them to see them get almost like the Tyranid treatment. Like we're just going to leave these guys alone for a month. Like let's not do anything too wild either way. But I do think with the Tomb World, just quickly on that, I would actually just increase it to 9 mana. So
yeah,
I think that the problem with going back to 6 is that when you play the card and 6 units come back, there's not really anything your opponent can do about it. Like, okay, there's a couple of very specific interactions that might, but like I like that one of the changes I like is that by going to 5, it just gives me a more normal way of perhaps being able to somewhat get back in the game. I mean, you're still going to be behind, right? Because it's an incredible tempo player. But I had it today where I was playing and I was like, oh yeah, I've got the Hex Destroyer in my graveyard. It'll come back with Tomb World. I Tomb Worlded, and it didn't come back. And I was like, shit, yeah, because I've got like double Praetorian, and I've got all these units, and now there's only 5, so it's less likely that one's come back. So I think I'd prefer to keep it at 5. I think that's a good change, but I do still think 8. Playing it turn 8 is still a little bit too much. So I'd like to see like turn 9, 9 energy, 5. It's a slight difference to what you're saying, but I think that'd be the sweet spot for me. But anyway, let's go on to a faction that I'm sure you and I both want to see more changes for, which is the Chaos faction. What's top of your list?
Well, with Chaos, I'm just gonna say a few words because right now I'm beginning to gather Chaos, so I don't really have any knowledge on them. One thing that I would definitely like to see is that Sylar Hexcorn is not random anymore because he should not be the worst Varo Tigurius. So that's one thing that I would like to see. Somehow you can keep his abilities random, like random target, but at least make him choose what he's gonna use. And on top of that, I think Iskandar Kaon needs some love, but I'm not sure how because right now, as I said, I got 0 experience with Chaos. So let's hear your opinion on Chaos, BJ, and we can wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I want more time with the faction too. So maybe next time we come back to this discussion, I'm going to go into a lot more. I would just say that from a deck design perspective, I've been a bit disappointed with Chaos because there doesn't seem to be for the worshippers, I forgot what they call them in the law.
I think your voice cut off a little bit in the end, but I believe you were saying that from the deck design perspective.
Yeah, deck design perspective. I want to see, where are the followers of Chaos, the cheap kind of I want some more wide. Cultists, that's what I was thinking of. Thank you. Yeah, I want to see more ability to do go wide strategies. Everything's a little bit too centered around the Dark Pact mechanic, and it's great, but it's one archetype, and I don't really see too much else in there. I think that's one of the biggest things. They did address the late game units, but I'm still to find something that works there. So
Yeah.
I still think they probably could do a little bit more buffing there. Those units are definitely better, but I'd like to see a little bit more. But I think for me, it's more about Chaos more than any other faction need new cards. That's actually where I think we're at. They're too limited from a deck design point of view.
Agreed.
Ecclesiarch, I just want to say, loved it today. I really loved hanging out and chatting and doing this. I hope everybody's enjoyed that. I hope you guys have really enjoyed that two-part podcast. If for some reason you have listened to this part 2 and not listened to part 1, go back and check out part 1 on the Ecclesiarch's channel. And guys, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Like any feedback, honestly. I mean, be nice, but be honest. If there's genuinely things you think we can improve, or topics that you want to hear us discuss, or any ideas for segments and stuff like that, we'd love to hear about it. Please hit the like button. Let us know in the comments what you think. And both Ecclesiarch and I, obviously, very passionate about this community. We want to build the community, we want the game to grow. If you would consider subscribing to our channels, that's going to really help us and incentivize us to do more of this great content for you. Hope you enjoyed it. For me, BJ the Brave signing out.
See you guys.
Take it easy.